Good morning and welcome to the 8th SDS live webinar. My name is Christopher. I work with our clients and the new business at SDS, along with my colleague Ricky, who reports directly to me. No, that's a joke. We both pretend to be each other's bosses all the time. Myself and Ricky are the people you usually buy from and only speak to again at a conference or need something else. But we'd love to have a chance to keep engaging and building conversations all year round. So these webinars are a really great way for us to do that and to obviously invite a lot of our users on as well. So I'm going to say, Andrew, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Andrew Markham. It says on my screen I'm a consultant, but I'm actually I do work for SDS. So I head up the new business team at SDS and have been there for 11 years. So I do a lot of the pitching of our products and fairly recently set up a new consultancy team that provides support, services, expertise around our software that can guide people through the complexities of it and how they do your role in your job.
Okay, great. And joining us in, Joy Winera, thank you for joining us. And if you'd like to give us a brief rundown of yourself, please.
Yeah, hi there, my name's Joy Winera. I'm not Executive Director of Housing like it says. Our actual Executive Director of Housing will be very upset about that. I am Executive Director of Development and Investment for Broadacres Housing Association. So we're a housing association based in North Yorkshire, beautiful North Yorkshire. We have around 6,000 properties, mainly rural, dispersed across that North Yorkshire area, and we are a developing organisation.
Thanks a lot, Joy. And Joanna Devoyle.
So my name is Joanna Devoyle and I am Director of Development as advertised on the screen. I work for Wales and West Housing. We own over 12,000 properties across Wales and develop across around 15 local authority areas across the country.
Thank you. And John Stevens.
I'm John Stevens, and that's what my title says, but it doesn't say anything else. I've worked with housing associations and local authorities for the last 30 years, delivering affordable housing and regeneration and large projects to individual homes. So I'm now currently working as a consultant with SDS and have done for the last nearly 7 years, which is a surprise to me. But I get out and about and see lots of SDS clients, from the big city clients to the small rural clients, and thoroughly enjoy the work. So that's me.
Thank you. And today we have another panelist who you can't see, but you will be able to hear. Duncan Smith, are you there?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I am here. For those who watch Game of Thrones, I am the faceless man. So you can laugh at me. It is actually better that you can't see me due to my lockdown haircut, believe you me. But I am Commercial Director at WHG, that's Walsall Housing Group, obviously based in the Midlands. We have just north of 22,000 properties. We're a strategic partner with Homes England and got a fairly seriously ambitious development programme. So look forward to interacting with you all this morning.
Brilliant, great. So today, we're here to talk about what we're doing at the moment. There's a lot of speculation out there, second waves, etc. There's enough of that. We don't need to do that. I don't think we're going to hit a second wave because we're keeping the first one going. But let's talk. We're here really to discuss what people are doing right now. I would really like this to be a bit of a group think as well. So we're going to be talking about how we've solved our problems. But I'd really like everyone to send in questions to talk about things that they've been having, if it's something we haven't mentioned, and also sort of prod the things we're saying, just to see, what we think about that. So to begin with, I am going to go to Andrew. Andrew.
Thank you. Okay. Right.
In terms of the, you were talking to me this morning about some of the things you were reading that you thought may be, important to housing associations going onwards in terms of the figures. What would you like to just recap that with me?
I think what we're trying to gauge, I think everyone's trying to gauge, is what's going to happen with sales prices. Obviously, I've done quite a few webinars recently about the impact of reducing sales price on viability and what that looks like, and the gearing effect. And I think some, obviously, housing associations are more exposed, and local authorities, to the private or the outright sale market, whether it's shared ownership or outright sale. So I think that's a real bone of contention to really look at your appraisals, how you've appraised it, really do some sensitivity analysis around that. And it's really mixed message. I mean, I was looking the last couple of days about kind of what Savills, what Nationwide are what's saying, and it really ranges, because it's kind of a little bit of a finger in the air. You know, they're saying there's a bit of a coil, people holding back, waiting for this lockdown to kind of ease enough, that they're confident enough to actually go ahead with their purchases. So they're ranging for prices. You know, Savills are saying that's kind of 5 to 10%. Knight Frank are saying 4%. There's very, very mixed messages coming out, but there is going to be some traction in the next 3 or 4 months. And how quickly we come out of this lockdown, it could be a little bit quicker. There could be a sharp bounce back. So, you know, I've heard and been reading on some of the press that the private sector are holding out on prices. They're not accepting lower prices on their units at this time. Be interesting to see what other people's view on that, and Duncan's view on that. See if that is what people think. So yeah, so that's my thoughts.
Okay.
Chris, can I come in? Yeah, I think we're a little bit in danger of making house price deflation a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's kind of like, the more we talk about it, oh woe is me, it's all terrible, the world's going to fall off the edge of the cliff. It ain't. Housing need is still there. Throughout the lockdown period, we probably had our largest month-on-month reservations for shared ownership. We managed to get through 20 sales, which is probably 20 out of a 30 target. I mean, everybody pulled together from a sales team perspective, but also from going back to valuers and just saying, listen, guys, the demand has not gone away. Yeah, let's get into a zone where we're saying the prices are going to hold. The message that we're giving as a sector is, we've got product, we've got demand, let's keep that going. And I think if we are all on the same sort of message of that, we can talk ourselves around. Because I mean, I had a board meeting on Monday, and there was so much hand wringing, so many people coming across and going, should we completely cancel our shared ownership program? No, stop. Let's not be stupid here. The customers are still there. We've got a great product. We deliver it well for customers. Customer experience is generally good. I think if we hold our line, then prices will hold their line as well. And we just got to be confident about that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Duncan. That's a really refreshing, strong, optimistic view. Does everyone agree with that? Then tell me if you don't. Joy Winnerup, what have you been doing differently? What are some of the things that you have changed right now?
So I think one of the things for us is I agree with Duncan to a certain degree, in terms of, I think we have to be really careful we're not winding ourselves up to creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. We were very similar in that we have seen absolute sustained demand in terms of our shared ownership portfolio. We also have a sort of a high-end open market sale development, which we just reserved one of our highest value units yesterday. So, and that is something that it's been quite a slow sales rate anyway, and actually what we've seen is a real uptick in terms of people coming in and visiting those properties. Now, for us, we think we're benefiting from the fact that we're a rural housing association building in some beautiful places, and what we have seen an upsurge in is out of towners. So we've got all the Londoners now who are looking at Richmond and North Yorkshire and saying, actually, I can get a house for three times big in a beautiful location. And you know what? I'm working from home and it's working fine. So why can't I go and, you know, buy that 5-bedroom detached in Richmond for the same as I'm paying for my 2-bed apartment, and actually I'll just work from there and look what's outside of my back door, you know. So I think for us, it's really rethinking about that and understanding what's happening in the market and understanding those changes, and not ending up with that knee-jerk reaction, which, yeah, absolutely. We've got board members who are sitting wringing their hands saying, cancel shared ownership, cancel our open market sales programme, what can we convert to affordable rent, what does it do with the appraisals? And, you know, I am sitting in those meetings saying, just hang on a minute, actually for us, in our location, this is a real opportunity to understand that shift in the market. Now, not straight away, let's think about our liquidity, but actually in that medium to long term, let's really explore that people's aspirations are changing in a big way. And, you know, we can really start responding to that, and looking at the opportunities that are out there for us to sort of be flexible. I think that's the key. That's what I keep saying in our board meetings. It's about the flexibility. So we're doing a lot of that scenario planning, a lot of that testing, and certainly for any future developments that we're looking at, we are, yeah, our finance team love it, but we're stress testing to the nth degree, because we're really just saying, well, hang on, let's just think about flexibility here. Let's think about flipping it, not just flipping the stills into affordable rent, but actually if we see this real surge in terms of demand for, you know, in some of our rural locations, actually, let's think about what happens if we flip them to open market sales and use that cash to do something elsewhere.
That's great. We're talking about how virtual remote working can be the boost the North needs in very, you know, no one really saw that coming. Joanna, you're working at Wales and West. How are you seeing a similar trend?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got a reasonably restricted sales program, in all honesty, but we have still seen sales completing, and we're still seeing the demand is there. We've had quite a lot of contact from people during lockdown of people wanting to arrange viewings that we've just not been able to do with them. So lots of pent up demand for people. I think Joy's point is really important about what people are looking for. So we need to make sure that we're bearing that in mind really carefully when we're looking at opportunities in the future, really thinking about what that will mean for us going forward. I think as a sector, this whole discussion feels a bit conflicting, doesn't it? Because where we've got a sales program ourselves and we need to make sure that we're kind of maintaining our robustness as a business so that we can carry on delivering that into the future, then it's important for us that the sales prices don't dip too far. But actually in terms of what we're here to do and making sure that housing is affordable to everybody, there's a completely different message there, isn't there? Which is that actually if houses do become more affordable to people, more people are able to help themselves and don't need our intervention, or at least need less of it. So there's a kind of a bigger picture thing as well, and that feels a little conflicting with what our business plans need going forward too.
John Stevens.
Hi. Well, I'm glad to hear there's optimism out there. I might be the old guy wringing my hands a little bit. What I'll reflect is what's going on in London and the South East, which people were already saying that the cross-subsidy model was broken in terms of there was caution with Brexit in terms of people making purchases. Prices had gone so high that people were taking the view maybe the cross-subsidy model is broken. And there's a focus in London saying, can the Mayor of London actually step in and front fund some schemes that have got mixed tenures in it, so that the rental is delivered and the housing associations have some peace of mind in terms of what they were expecting to achieve in terms of sales actually comes to them as front funding from subsidy. So there is some nervousness in the South, but I think that nervousness was already there in terms of the cycle of house prices and sales. I think there's a wider picture also with, we don't really know what we're facing coming out of all of this because there are so many complex parts to this. There's people in furlough, people who are, you know, on reduced incomes. We've yet to see the impact of evictions because evictions were stopped for a period of time. That's going to end in June, the end of June. So there's all sorts of competing elements coming together. And I think it's for us as in the affordable housing sector to do everything we can. And I think previously I've mentioned things like mortgage rescue, where relationship breakdown happens. It's something that I'm passionate about in terms of shared ownership teams and marketing teams engaging with communities about not just selling properties, but also perhaps reverse staircasing, supporting people with mortgage rescue, etc. And yes, there's also been a discussion, a wide discussion about the preference for flipping tenures and having flexible tenures. And I think a rent to home buy, not a rent to buy model, would actually be beneficial. So rent to shared ownership. I think Joanna wants to say something. Yeah.
Sorry, John, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
I was just going to, just on that point, in Wales, there's the way the funding works for grant funding. There's rent to own and shared ownership, and the grant funding is flexible, so you can apply for rent to own funding, which is at 30% of the cost of delivering the scheme, and then if people, and then you can judge whether you want it. Shared ownership funding is at 25%. You can apply for the rent to own funding, and then you can judge based on the person's circumstances as to which product is going to be best for them, and you can make that decision at the time that you're selling it rather than needing to make it up front. And I think that will be really useful for us in this situation. It seems to me that rent to own kind of might have quite a lot going for it right now, and I completely agree, John. I think what we're seeing at the moment is a lot of pent-up demand and people being shielded from the impacts by the furlough programme. Yeah. And actually, as that ends, that's when we'll start to see the real impacts.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've lost Andrew, but I'm sure he'll rejoin us. Sorry, carry on, John.
You've got other impacts, which is we had the initiative Everybody In. It was taking everybody homelessness on the streets into accommodation, and they're now in temporary accommodation. But there's no kind of, well, what are we doing? Are we moving on to move on accommodation for those people, or what is the solution? And so there's lots of competing demands at the moment for us as the sector. And then in terms of development sites, it's a case of, is the supply chain there to actually support the ongoing development that we're expected to deliver, or are we going to see delays and an extended program delivery deadline, which probably we're looking at. So there's lots of uncertainty. In terms of coming back to the sales view that Duncan was talking about, I think there's a real issue. Yes, we could talk ourselves down. And I just want to reference what happened. This is because I'm the old guy on the panel. With the Lehman's crash at that time, we had a very dynamic sales executive who realized that it was actually about customer confidence. And he put together a special package at that time that said, we will guarantee any sales loss over the next few years if you go ahead and purchase this property. And it gave people a lot of confidence. But also alongside that, he did a little offering of white goods and additional features that actually boosted people's confidence to say, yes, this is a partner worth buying property with, because they're looking out at my concerns and they're supporting me with this, what in effect he described as a customer cuddle. And we might need those sorts of initiatives just to push that confidence boundary. So I'm glad that other areas of the country are more confident. What I'm seeing in London and the southeast is actually that cycle and probably overvalue, and some empty properties out there that were expected to sell. And obviously people are talking about flipping those into rented and affordable tenures, but they're also asking for grant for that. So that's what I'm seeing out there.
Chris, it's the faceless man. Can I come in on?
Go ahead, Duncan. Go ahead, please.
I think John and I might be talking about the same senior sales executive who might actually be on my board. And the only added thing I would bring in with John, which is absolutely the customer cuddle is exactly where we want to be, is actually payment protection insurance. And we're researching at the moment whether we can actually get a set of policies where we can forward fund payment protection insurance for those people who might be worried about their employment status over the next 12 months. And I'm suggesting we gift it to them for a year, and then obviously if they want to carry on with that policy after that 12 months, because the customer confidence thing is all around that money, isn't it? On a monthly basis, how am I going to pay for my mortgage, and how am I going to pay for my for my goodies and my beer tokens? And it's if we can give them some confidence that we've got their mortgage covered if the worst happened, then I think that gives them much more confidence to go forward and make that purchase.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Duncan. So I've got something in from Angarad Hodge. It's from Two Rivers in housing in Gloucestershire, just confirming that we have also seen sustained demand and completed on shared ownership sales during lockdown. And now restrictions have been lifted, requests for viewings have really ramped up. So it seems like right now, outside of London is doing quite well. And London is getting a little stung, it appears. Jonathan Smith, interesting debate about opportunities arising from crisis as working from home is becoming more prevalent. Will this affect the design and layout of housing in the future? Trend towards office living. How would this be reflected in rental levels, assuming an increase in floor area? There's a huge amount of stuff that can change, but let's talk about agile working, okay? We've been thrust into it. Some people have been prepared, some people have not been prepared at all. And the level of preparedness, depending on who you're working with, is really going to affect you. So let's just talk about what problems we had and how we've overcome that. I'm going to start with you, Joy. Agile.
Yeah. Okay, so for us, I'm not going to say COVID came at a good time because that would be a ridiculous statement to make, but Broadacres had been on quite a big business transformation journey, and for us, much of the business was sort of, if not already agile working, certainly gearing up for agile working, so property services teams with PDAs. Pretty much 80% of our workforce was already working on laptops or mobile devices. So from that kind of physical hardware point of view, we were lucky in that we didn't have that rush to curries that I know some organisations had to try and scoop up the last iPads and laptops that they had rolling around. We were pretty much there. What we hadn't done, and what I'm sure will be a big obstacle for everybody, was we hadn't had time to maybe put in place that full training for people. So it's different when you're agile working, but actually, at the end of the day, you can just go back in the office if it goes wrong, or actually when you can't get onto the server, you just think, oh, do you know what, I was going to work from home, but actually I'll just get in the car and I'll drive into the office. And that's the real difference that we've seen. For us, the other big, huge thing was partners and external agencies. So we have seen a real split in terms of the organisations that we work with. So our consultants, for example, in the ones who were absolutely ready for this, they were already agile working, or certainly they had their plans in place to deal with this, and the old school, if you like. Now housing is a bit old school, isn't it? We're a bit stuck in the mud sometimes in housing and development, and there was some of our, for example, some of our EAs who this just hit them like a ball out of the blue. They were not set up to deal with this kind of loss of that office space and dealing with people on a remote basis. And for us, it's come an interesting time because we're just about to kick off our PQQs for our next consultants framework. And I've essentially taken those PQQs and ripped half of them up and chucked them in the bin and said, right, actually, do you know what? These are the questions we need to start asking. So whereas before I'd be saying, are you a local business? Where's your office? Are you, can you get to us easily? Can you service our sites easily? Do you know our customers? Now I'm saying, actually, I'm not that bothered where your office is, but how are you set up to deal with agile working? How will you work in this new world? What happens if in 2 months' time we're all back on lockdown? How have you coped with that? How are you still delivering the services? And so there's a whole raft of kind of considerations within those frameworks that we've just never had to think about before. And if we have thought about, it's always been on the periphery, not at the heart of kind of how we deal with businesses. And I think that is changing, and that will have to change, across the board. So yeah, for us, how we pick our partners is certainly going to change moving forward, the criteria for that.
Thank you, Joy. Joanna, I'm seeing you are definitely saying the same thing, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, very much the same sort of messages. We internally, we were quite well set up to deal with needing to work in an agile way. And although it was quite different for everybody and there was a lot of learning happened very quickly, people were able to pick up on that, and that's been quite successful. We haven't found people's ability to work in an agile way has necessarily been that much of a barrier for us in terms of our consultants and things. We have found it a barrier for local authorities. So there are quite a lot of local authorities that just weren't set up to be able to work remotely. Our interaction with planning departments and what they're able to process and the interaction we're able to get with them has been really quite challenging in some areas, markedly more than others. What we're finding in terms of consultants and contractors, more of a challenge is the number of staff and the type of staff that have been put on furlough. So when initially half of our sites closed and then over the next few weeks reopened again, so we've only got one or two that still remain closed at the moment. So our initial thoughts were we needed to move to cracking on with a lot of the pre-contract work that we've got, doing a lot of the design stuff that we could still move forward and still do remotely. And that's been quite successful, but where we've hit challenges have been where architects or employers agents and so on have furloughed a number of their staff. And either those staff were people who were previously working on our project, excuse me, were previously working on our project, and that kind of knowledge has been lost because somebody else has picked it up. Or you've got one or two people kind of picking up all of the work for everybody, and they're a little bit overloaded at the moment. So completely understandable that organisations would make that decision to support the strengths of their business, but quite a challenge for us in trying to get things moving forward as quickly as we would like them to.
Thank you, Joanna. And Duncan Smith, the faceless voice. Is he here?
Yes, Chris, I am still here.
I'm back.
I think the answer from my well, I'll deal with my personal perspective first. I don't like working from home. That's me, because of two reasons. One, the kind of separation of home and work for me is important psychologically. I get up, I put my three-piece suit on, I go to work, I do my job, and I come home. And again, that's just a personal opinion. And also a little bit, and genuinely an isolation thing. You know, I live alone. I'm happy to share that with everybody. And it's been really psychologically quite difficult because I'm quite a gregarious individual, and I love the office environment and banter and all the rest of it that goes with it. So I've kind of missed that personally. Shove that to one side, and then talk about the organisation. I think my employer, and I mean this most seriously, has been exceptional in terms of dealing with the issues. We were not an organisation that was geared up for it. Our business continuity stuff has kicked in, and there are certain individuals and departments within the organisation that have pulled out all the stops. And I think I generally get that from everybody in the sector. Is everybody has responded to this crisis with the best foot forward and doing everything they possibly can for customers mainly, and that's obviously the cohort that we've got to remember more than anybody else. We are housing businesses who look after our customers, and I think we've done that with aplomb. In terms of the agile working piece, I mean, obviously you can't see me, so something still doesn't work. But by the same token, I'm not necessarily worried about that. The agile nature for me has just made things take longer to be achieved, I suppose, is the overall bit. So, we need to take some good stuff away from this, which is, yes, we can keep all of our businesses going, but actually that face-to-face interaction and that people being in a room and the synergy created by teams is lesser from a video call and a voice call perspective. I echo Joanna's sentiments about dealing with local authorities and certain getting a planning permission was tough enough when you could see somebody face to face. When you can't see somebody face to face and they have to go through virtual planning committees, it's virtually impossible. But anyway, that's kind of like a practical thing that I'm sure will come out of. I think from our business perspective going forward, the lessons that we'll learn are we need to make significant and ongoing investment in technology and IT to make sure that we can run our business, whatever happens with this or the next crisis or the crisis after that. And I think it's our business has learned that lesson, and I think that will be fantastic from the perspective of, you know, SDS. I am a big supporter in all the software that SDS offers. We buy everything, and I'm not ashamed of saying that, because the end-to-end usefulness of your software is exceptional for me. I want to be able to manage my development business from one version of the truth. So from Proval through SQL to Home Match for me is perfect, and I'm basing what we're doing technologically going forward on that end-to-end process. So I suppose overall, I'm happy that we can still run the business. I really want to get back in the office and shake people's hands and be able to, you know, talk face to face. But at the end of the day, we've managed to continue to serve our customers, and those are the people who we need to think about most of all in the future.
John Stevens, you work with local authorities a lot. What's your experience been of Agile? Has it affected you at all in terms of being able to produce the viability that you've been doing for them?
Well, I'm usually locked in my office at home by SDS to write reports for local authorities. So here I am. Yeah.
It's harsh.
So,
it's harsh.
Joking aside, I spoke to a local authority who I was due to go and meet with, and obviously with lockdown, we weren't able to progress with that. I prefer face-to-face meetings with people, but they were telling me that unfortunately they'd gone through a whole process of opening up their offices for agile working, hot desking, taken down lots of walls between offices, etc. And they'd had a message from the executives team saying it's going to take a while, guys, to get you back into the office, because to safeguard you, we need to put some walls back up. We need to get some permanent places that people are working in, so we're not wiping down, you know, every time everybody stands up to walk away from their desk. So I think that's been interesting for me. There are some, it's been slower in local authorities to see how they're adapting to things. But my specific clients, we've all grappled with the technology, and we've all grappled to manage to make a meeting together, and we're all getting to grips with the various different software offerings, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Skype, GoToMeeting, whatever. So even at my age, I'm getting to grips with that technology as well. Yeah.
But apart from, I think we're focusing there on conferencing technology. Obviously, meeting and getting the communication going and is extremely important. What about the construction element of agile working? Has anyone had, is it possible? Are we looking at a huge construction slowdown if we have to continue to try and socially distance? Is this a concern for anyone? Are you adjusting your plans? Joy Winner, I'm looking at you.
I'm nodding furiously, totally. Yeah. So for me, that is my big thing that keeps me awake at night. Is we work with a lot of small and medium contractors. Given what we do a lot of rural exception sites, etc. You know, I'm talking 4 or 5 units up in the Dales somewhere, and we have seen the social distancing measures and the impact on the supply chain really hit those guys the hardest. You know, they don't have the big infrastructure, they don't have the kind of the cash behind them to put some of these things in place easily and quickly, and they don't have the kind of reserves to fall back on. So we're doing a lot of hand-holding with those small and medium-sized contractors and trying to work with them, because the last thing we want is for them to go under. The last thing we want is for that to happen, A, halfway through a site, but B, for our future pipeline. You know, they are the lifeblood of rural development for us. If we lose them, we're the best one in the world. The big guys aren't interested in coming and building me, you know, 4 units in the Yorkshire Dales. They're just not. So they really are key. And yeah, we're seeing they are, you know, they're great, because we find the lines of communication with them are really easy and open. We tend to talk to one person, and that person tends to know everything that's going on in their own business. but they just don't know. There is just that huge uncertainty for them. They've tried where possible, certainly in our experience, to not furlough staff, and that has left them in a bit more of a precarious situation, perhaps. They're trying to keep going. They understand that they don't want to pass a load of cost on to us on the client, because it potentially makes us not use them in the future or makes it seem unviable. But they're juggling so much at the moment. And I think for us, it's really making us think about our pipeline and moving forward. It's making it very difficult to do those appraisals and to understand what impact that's going to have. We did some kind of scenario planning on Proval, where we kind of just shoved everything back 6 months and said, what does it look like if we had 6 months on every build program? And it won't come as a surprise to anybody that essentially killed our development program. So it really is that. It is that level of uncertainty that we're working with, and I've got to sit down and look my board in the eyes when I put an appraisal in front of them and say, yes, it's development and things change, but I genuinely think this scheme is viable, and I'm just not sure I can say that to them at the moment for something that's an absolute, it's not going to start on site for another 3 or 4 months, for example. We just don't have that crystal ball to exactly understand what that's going to look like with some of our smaller and medium contractors.
And what do you say to them, Joy? Is presumably you've got to give them something.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're doing at the moment is we're giving them a range of scenarios. So we're saying to them, look, guys, this is what we think it's going to look like. Here's your best case, here's your worst case. So essentially what I'm asking them to do is to understand the risks that we're taking when we're doing that. We don't want to close up shop. We don't want to stop developing. Actually, the pandemic's brought a few opportunities to us that we maybe wouldn't have got, in the past, because other RPs are dropping out, other house builders are dropping out of deals. So I'm kind of balancing up that, taking the opportunities where they come with, look, Bob, but I'm adding a risk sticker to this. This is what it could look like. But it's also about the measures that we're putting in place. So we're doing things like we're trying to look at options with landowners. We're trying to look at deferred payment schedules. We're trying to look at how we can set heads of terms out that means we can, with the best will in the world, back out, but making sure that the landowners and the agents get something out of that deal as well. We're not going saying, oh, woe is us, housing association, please let us off, we're not going to pay a deposit. But actually, look, guys, we'll do something with you here. Let's pay you a deposit. Let's look at a deferred payment schedule. But actually, we want building into that, that actually if 12 months down the line we say we just can't make this work for us, you walk away, you've got your deposit, we walk away without a penalty, and actually we've tried to get the deal done. So that's really what we're doing. We're looking at restructuring quite a lot of the deals that we're kind of in process. And
presenting a range rather than the definitive, that you would have done before.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going warts on all of the board. I'm saying this is my blue sky. Everything's amazing. We don't have this, L-shaped recession. And I'm going and saying, and this is what happens if we do have the L-shaped recession, and we see build prices go up by X% and sales prices drop by Y%. So they've got that full range in front of them.
Thank you, Joanna DeVoyle. What's your view on construction, and are you in the same position in terms of having to support smaller builders and make sure that they don't go bust?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's definitely, we're definitely all facing delays. Things are going to take longer to deliver. I don't think there's really any question about that. How delayed things are is yet to be seen. What we're seeing, just on a positive note, what we're seeing on site is that the working practices are resulting in really good quality. Where you've got one guy working in one plot and focusing on their job without other people all around them and stuff, actually we're finding that's working pretty well. And on one of our schemes, quite a large scheme, we've actually found on one of the phases that productivity has been really good, and they've moved forward more quickly there, perhaps as a result of not having that jumble of lots of people kind of trying to do everything at once. So a little bit of a bonus, but a small piece in terms of looking at the delays as a whole. I think we've got quite a balancing act to do, because we obviously need to preserve the robustness and the strength of our businesses and make sure that we're making the right decisions and taking the right amount of risk and not being silly about that. But we also have a really important part to play in terms of supporting those SME businesses. and working collaboratively with them to find contract terms that will work for them and for us in this kind of scenario, so that nobody is forced into taking an amount of risk that would be uncomfortable for them or would cause problems for their business. So I think having those kind of, we're very fortunate in the way that we've set up our procurement with contractors, that's kind of the basis that those conversations happen on already. And we're just kind of working with our partners to try and understand how that can work for them going forward, and where we can find that middle ground where we're comfortable with the level of risk that they are too, and we can work together on that and keep those conversations open.
And Duncan Smith, how are you doing with social distancing in construction at the moment?
Yeah, look, it's going to have an effect. Duncan Smith states the bleeding obvious. And I think we're going to see probably in the next couple of months how that's going to affect programs, etc. And again, at risk of stating the obvious. From my perspective, I suppose we have a bit of a duty as the sector to support SMEs. Absolutely, 100% fully in support of that. And I know from what Joanna and Joy said, both of those organisations will do so. We're looking at approaching every single contractor, which is a very difficult business, irrespective of COVID, by the way, to make any money out of it, and just saying honestly, how can we help? Let's have that honest discussion. If we get into a position where we're starting to talk about the contract, we've failed. We want to have an adult conversation with those organisations about how we can sustain those businesses so that they can make a profit and we can get our jobs done in a sensible timescale. And there's lots of different things you can do around that. We are looking at payment terms. It is fair in this crisis for us to be saying, can we accelerate making payments? That's not overpaying. That's just getting the money to the organisations more quickly. Can we do anything in terms of assisting them with applications, for example, to defer 106 payments? We've got that flexibility now. We'll see how that works for individual sites and organisations, but we can support organisations with those discussions with local authorities, because 9 times out of 10 we're their partner, and they slightly trust us, I suppose, more than necessarily private sector organisations. But finally, what I wanted to say around that was around changing to a more risk sharing approach. So we've even been pushing forward on some joint ventures during this process, and in that, if you are taking a risk alongside that private sector organisation, then both of you are sharing the same effects of that. And I think that's what is going to be great for me, that's going to come out of the crisis, is those partnership working aspects that we all aspire to. We all say, oh yeah, we're really good at partnership working. We're going to have to do it because we're all in it together. And we can't get to a position of saying, you're a contractor and we want to D&B our contractual arrangements and get you to take all the risk. That ain't going to happen, because organisations aren't going to be about to do it. So actually, if there's anything that comes out of this for us and the private sector contracting organisations, is that actually we'll have to come closer together, and we'll come closer together and set a set of objectives on a particular project, or a limited liability partnership, or a contractual joint venture that actually work for both parties, and we live and die by those rules. And that will be fantastic, because we'll get into symbiotic relationships, and we'll get into long-term relationships rather than that very short-term tendering and contracting. We will do true partnering, which will be, your business needs profit to survive, our business needs delivery to survive. Let's work together to make sure that happens. Sorry, that was very fluffy, Chris. I almost wanted to cuddle myself while I was saying it.
John, thank you, Duncan. No, that was great. John, when it comes to construction, any advice you'd like to add on to that in terms of how we're meant to be?
I'm interested to hear Duncan's increased enthusiasm for partnering, because it fell off the agenda for a while as everybody went back to design, build, procurement. So partnering and open book budgets, is probably the way to go forward in this crisis. We've worked with them before. It's just now is the time to actually follow up what Duncan's saying and actually do part of the shared risk and risk management and change control is really critical in these challenging times. I think what will also pop its head up is MMC, and is that going to save the day? Eternally just coming over the horizon to save the day is MMC. Yes, a little bit skeptical, having had my fingers burnt in several cycles of MMC, but I would like to see well-insulated fabric structures arriving on site that perhaps could be finished by local tradespeople. I think that's a sort of halfway house with MMC. It's not a one-stop complete delivery. I think it's delivering well-insulated structures to site. No, I don't really want to add any more. I'm welcoming the new partnering, the new partnering horizon that's been announced by Duncan. That's great.
Chris, can I just make one more point that I forgot around our dear friends at Homes England? And it's
absolutely
not...
I was coming on to them, but yeah,
oh, right.
go on.
Look at me with the perfect segue. Obviously, we're very lucky. We're one of 23 strategic partners, and the world works slightly different for us. But the one thing that strategic partnerships bring is flexibility around tenure. And listening to everybody, talk about, we're looking at our programs. What are we going to do about X, Y, and Z shared ownership? The strategic partnership framework gives us an ability to change tenure halfway through, or at the end, or whenever we want to. And again, at the risk of shamelessly plugging your software again, what I have to do then is obviously utilize SDS software to be able to reprofile that scheme and give the sensitivity analysis and the perfect storm analysis. And we're really keen at the moment to provide, as Joy alluded to, both a kind of worst case scenario, a best case scenario, and actually 45 possible outcomes in the middle. I wish the planning system worked in the same way as your software, but unfortunately it kind of doesn't. So the bit that doesn't really work from the flexible tenure discussion is actually planning permission. But again, I'm not going to change the planning system on this webinar by any stretch of the imagination. But all the point I was massively rushing towards was, I think interaction with our dear friends at Homes England, while it's sometimes almost the most difficult thing to do, the more information we give them at the moment about what is causing us problems, and the more suggestions and ideas and things that we can give them, is power to their elbow when eventually, and I'm not saying they've been brilliant around this, they come out with something new about how they can help the sector. And I think we've got to keep going from our perspective in terms of delivering the development. Something will be coming from them in due course, and the more we can give them in terms of what we want, the better that will be.
Thank you. I love how I just have to pretend that Andrew isn't like constantly popping in and out of the just ignore him. It's fine. He always does this. Joy, what would you like to see from Homes England?
So it's, to be honest, it's no different from what we want to see from Homes England for the last 5 years, is it? For me, it is around that understanding and that flexibility for us, and it's those conversations. We already have a lot of conversations with Homes England, being a rural provider, in terms of the explanations for why we need higher grant rates, for why perhaps we're not able to meet some of their criteria for things like MMC, because when you're delivering 4 units in the top of the Yorkshire Dales, it's not going to stack if you're using MMC at the moment. Don't get me wrong, I worked on Gateshead Innovation Village, so I've got experience of working with MMC, and I think it's come a long way, but it's not there yet for that kind of stuff. So all of those conversations that we've been having with Homes England, it's just about continuing them for us. And I think what we've been concerned with over the last sort of 12 months has been the huge shift towards the real push on infrastructure projects, and the bigger is beautiful. And for us, that is difficult. A lot of the initiatives, if you like, that have come out from Homes England. So I always laugh about their small sites fund, which was for developments of 100 units, and that is not a small site for anyone I've been speaking to in the RP world. So it really is around yeah, listening and flexibility, and just understanding that we don't have one answer, you know, and there is not one size fits all. And I guess that's the same as we've always been saying. It's just that it's, you know, it's in a different context now. And I think that point about talking to them constantly, they can't give much back at the moment, and that can be frustrating. I get that. I hear that a lot from other development directors. You know, we've asked for this and they can't give us an answer to whether or not we can carry the grant over. Well, no, they can't, but that doesn't mean we should stop trying and we should stop communicating. So yeah, you might not get anything back, but that point about keep going, keep telling them, keep giving them all the information, they need that to be able to do that information gathering and, you know, come up with something to take back out to us. At the moment, they haven't got anything, but that doesn't mean we should stop, you know, keep going.
We have actually asked them to come on the show, and they were interested, but then it was no, not doing this, not yet. So that they clearly there is, you know, they're not willing to share anything at the moment. They're keeping their cards very close to their chest right now. And I hope that we do get them on one of these webinars shortly. Joanna, what's your experience been, and what would you like to see from them?
Well, we're in a slightly different context working in Wales. That the Welsh government.
Oh, sorry, I apologise. You're a regulator.
But similar kind of issues. The grant structure looks quite different to how it does in England at the moment. And there was a review. The affordable housing review was concluded last year. As a result of that, there were some changes that were due to be happening now, which have, as a result of the current situation, have been postponed. So I think. You know, there were some benefits that as a sector and as a community that we would have seen from those being implemented, and that's been delayed a bit. Understandably low, but you know, the reason they've made that decision is just to allow everyone to crack on with all the challenges they've already got, rather than also having to deal with that change as well. So I think that was a sensible decision. And you know, same sort of thing, we're having regular conversations with Welsh Government to explain to them what our opportunities look like, what our challenges look like, and what they might be able to do to support us. It's just there's so many pulls on public funding at the moment, aren't there, for so many good reasons, and there's a lot to take in so they can make the right decisions on how to allocate that money. So, you know, understandable that they don't have all the answers for us straight away. But you know, we know that they're considering the right things, and at least by letting them know what we're dealing with, that places them better to do that. One of the things that's been delayed, actually, come back to something we talked about earlier, was a change to the housing standards for Wales. So that has been postponed, but I imagine it might also look a little bit different now. So initially, the intention was just that that would be postponed until a consultation could be done properly, but actually taking into account what people want from their homes and how that has changed, it probably gives an opportunity to build that into that conversation too.
Thank you, thank you. And John, do you have anything to add to that in terms of what you would recommend?
It is what you described, that the regulators are kind of just listening, and if we can keep the communication up with them, then we can influence what comes back at us. That's what I'd like to emphasise. So just emphasising what everybody else is saying.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're coming to the end now. Andrew, have you got? It's been great having you on the show today, Andrew.
I have a few IT issues today. Suddenly just froze and suddenly kicked me out. Even my cable that has been provided for me has failed. So it's been an interesting morning. Sorry about that, guys.
We have a voice in the sky, Duncan. We've had Andrew coming in and out, but I hope everyone has got a lot from this session. I've really enjoyed it. I'm really grateful for everything that you've given us, Joanna, Joy, John, Duncan. Thank you so much. You're people we hope to continue to work with, and yeah, we're really grateful for the time you've given us this morning. Andrew, is there any last things you'd like to say before I crash the plane down and just kill the thing like I do every day?
It's been a good discussion. It's been a good discussion. Sorry I haven't been too involved in it this week. I think next week we're talking about sales and home match and the sales process, and then market appraisals, not just viability appraisals, but the importance of market appraisals, because I think that is the gathering the data and understanding what's happening locally where you are is important, and there's an important structure of doing that, and how and how best practice you can do that and how regularly you should be doing that. So we're going to be touching on that with Greg Warner Harris, which is our sales and marketing consultant, and then talking through a few of the procedures and tracking that Duncan most talked about our new product Home Match that tracks the sales process and importantly gathers that data and brings it back into your SQL, your project management system, that aligns the information gathering flow back. And I just think it's a good opportunity that SDS are here still to help you. We've been talking to lots of clients about supporting you, not just on standard training, but coaching, looking at, and we've been working along with Duncan recently about procedures, making sure we are looking and helping you, making sure all the systems and procedures are in place, ready for when we're back fully operational or when you're fully operational. So we're doing a lot of work with different clients around the country and indeed in Wales as well. So.
Okay, great. Everyone, have a great day. We'll see you again next week. And yes, it's a goodbye.
I'll be back next week, hopefully, with a better reception.
We can't wait.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Duncan.
Thanks very much.